for the guys who are listening to you for the first time, give them a little bit of a background. Take us back to your early childhood, growing up. Where did you grow up? How was the environment like in terms of personality? If we were to go and ask a lot of your friends you grew up with, who would they say you are?
I don't know what they would say. People have different versions of who I am. But I was born and raised in Nairobi, areas of Eastlands. And then in my teens, between 11 and 16, 17, I was actually living in the slums. And then thereafter, because of education and things like that, got out of that and found myself into the food space, which is a journey that I'm more interested to talk about. But before then, I went and did my journalism, and then I went into film, and then I went into photography. But then I had two things, growing up in the slum, there was always, you really need to get out of that. And there were two things for me. It was either going to be education or business. So I was perfecting the two sides. I was really good at business, but I was also very good with academics. But then I started paying a lot of attention with business. So school was secondary for me. But then at the end of it, I still had to go pursue, because growing up, I wanted to be, when people would ask me, what do you want to be? I said, I just want to be a writer, and I want to be a salesperson. There were those two things. So I wanted to fulfill that part of being a writer in the creative space, but then I didn't find a lot of opportunities in that space. So I went with journalism, and then, I went into the film space, and then I went into photography as separate courses. And then that is late 2000, coming to about 2010, there was a project I was working on, which was I was translating a book called The Art of Living. So that book took me to parts of Asia, because it had parts written in one of the ancient languages called Pali. And I had to travel. I had to go to India. I had to go to Burma, where the language, it's like there was an institute where they preserved the language, and a few people were talking, So I wanted to understand that and be able to translate the book. And then, that after I finished the project, it was for a couple of months actually. Coming back, I got sick. And then that's where now my story and connection with the markets, popped.
Okay. So take us through that story. So you've come back. What happened?
So it was very interesting. So when I came back, I bumped into a friend that we went to school with, and I was with my girlfriend then downtown. And it was about maybe midday thereabout. And, obvious lunchtime and things like that. So we were brainstorming, hey, it's lunch, we need to go have lunch and things like that. So what are we going to have? So we had a conversation between ourselves. And we said, yeah, let's go to my place. Let's cook some food. So we decided we were going to buy chicken. So we went to City Market. We bought 3 thighs, each was going to have their own. Went to my place. I cooked the meal. It was just simple chicken with ugali, and veg. And as soon as we finished eating, that was maybe at about 3:30. I think that's the last time I had good health, because I reacted to the food. The two did not react, but I reacted. And it wasn't very nice. I was in pain. I was complaining, I was crying, and the obvious thing, you kind of get like counter medicine, and then I didn't sleep the whole night, and then the first thing early morning, I started my hospital visits, and it was one hospital after the other. I was just moving, and you can imagine I'm skinny generally, but then there's this disease that I cannot figure out what it is, and I'm just dying slowly. I think I was dying slowly, because by the time which was very divine, I checked myself in a couple of times in different hospitals, and I said, I'm not leaving until you find out what it is, and no one could find what it was. And I remember just switching hospitals, from one to the other, just separated by a road. And my brother-in-law was like, I have a friend who, I went to school with, he's a doctor, maybe let's just go and see him. And by then I'm on a wheelchair. I'm usually between 50 to 55 kilos just as a human being. But that within the 7 months, I had lost so much weight. I was barely bones. I think I was between maybe 38, 40 kilos. So I remember we went to see this doctor. he was just a general GP. I had seen so many experts, but this guy was just a general GP. And he looked at me, and by then my voice wasn't like, you could not hear me talking. And I remember my brother was there, my sister was there, my brother-in-law was there, and they were all trying to explain on my behalf to the doctor what I'm going through. And the doctor was like, no, let him explain. And I was really struggling to explain. I knew what to say, but it could just not come out. And he said he has an idea what it could be. And, that's just one of the best moments, And he said he's not an expert, but he's read something just from a general, like a novel or something. And he said it could be a form of myositis. And he said, don't move him. He needs to get an admission, and we'll get a specialist to start working on him. So at that point, I remember sending my brother, go find as much information about myositis and bring the information to me. So he went online, Google, brought the info. And for me, there are a couple of things. It was such a good moment because...
And this is in 2010?
Now, this is in 2010. 2009, connecting to 2010. And it was a good moment for me because, one, I was happy. I knew what was killing me. The second thing was I needed to get as much information about the condition just to figure out, is it something that I can deal with it? It wasn't scary to me, but for my close friends, family, it was scary because everything about it was it's incurable, which is true, it's incurable. Most people die between 2 to 3 years, But then as soon as it was discovered, then I was put on very high doses of steroid. I was put on immune suppressant and a whole load of other supporting drugs. So, and the condition itself, it's where your antibodies, instead of protecting you, they attack you. So for my case, the antibodies, they would attack my muscles. And they would attack the whole sets of muscles. So at that point, I was on the high doses, but I was also researching a lot how to deal with this autoimmune disease. And I bumped into a line that just said, I can manage the condition with medication and eating well. And there was a line that said organic, in that line. Yeah. So at that point, I was like, if eating well can contribute to my well-being, why not give it a shot, And that part of eating well came, that line and that revelation came after I was taken back to the hospital because I had developed induced diabetes. So the induced diabetes was triggered by the steroids. They impaired my pancreas. So I was having now this other thing to deal with. So I was into insulin injections, morning, lunch, in the evening. So at that point again, my girlfriend then, I said, when the time comes for me to eat real food, I want to eat organic, because I was on liquid medicated diet for a very long time. So I remember that time she went to find some organic food and she came back and nothing was actually like organic, because everyone says, oh, this comes from I don't know where, I just bought it from I don't know who. It was all resellers and middlemen. So there was no history, there was no connection about this food, where it came from and all that, how it was produced. So at that point, I decided to become a farmer. So I became a farmer. I started producing food for my own self. So it was more of a selfish interest, But then before I realized, the food was quite a lot. And I started opening up my space for friends and family on weekends to come and access this food. I wasn't charging, if you wanted to pay, fine. But, it was just a lot of food there. I saw kids coming. They loved the space and all that. And the thought of setting up a market popped. But then, remember, I've got the business mindset, but there's also something here. But then how do I approach it as a business? It cuts between a social enterprise, a noble cause, something not to derive money from, but you need money to get it going, But there was a movement already. I think the organic movement must have started in this country either mid or early 2000s. But there was no force. There was no. It was there. People were doing things, be it at Rusty Nail and a few other places. So at that point, is where the energies came together. There were farmers that were practicing that. I was there, but very dedicated. But for my case, it was a bit different. I approached it not from just a thought. It was something that I was going through, and I wanted to come out of it. So I was approaching this market concept and production from a direct beneficiary. It wasn't like I'm creating something for other people. I was creating something for myself. But I thought there were more other people out there like me that would want this food. Selfish reason, very, when I look at it now, it's very, very limiting and short-sighted, because it was just a group, a clique, of people. And the thought of, as a sick person, and especially if you have terminal illness, something interesting, you will always find what you need. You will always find what you need. That's why for me, I had to go and look for it. And later on is when it came to my thinking, sick people will always find good food. And if they don't find good food, they will produce it. What about normal, healthy, functioning people? These are the majority. These are the people that need this food. If I'm normal, healthy, I need more of the good stuff to continue being normal and healthy. So I started looking at it from a broader way. So what happened, there was a group of farmers, and for many, many years, the clique of farmers were very few. The markets I did with 6 farmers, the markets I did with 11 farmers, the markets I did 21 farmers. And when I did a market with 21 farmers, it was strictly farmers, direct producers. For many, many years, 2010, 2011, 2012, I would say up to maybe about 2013, it was only farmers. There was no one else, and it was the direct producer with their produce, I would do a lot of farm visits. I was really hard on farmers. I didn't want shortcuts. I didn't want people to lie or cheat and things like that, because I imagine that is me eating bad food if someone cheats.